House Speaker John Boehner embraced what he called a Plan B Tuesday, saying to avert the so-called fiscal cliff, he wants a bill passed through the House now and on his own slightly amended terms.
We all know that every income tax filer in America is going to pay higher rates unless Congress acts. So I believe it's important that we protect as many American taxpayers as we can.
Boehner and President Barack Obama have met 3 times over the last week to negotiate which income tax brackets should benefit from extended Bush-era tax cuts. The end of the year would bring an end to those tax cuts
if we go over the cliff, and it looks like that's where we're headed, Mr. President, the House of Representatives, as we speak, with 4 days left after today before the first year, aren't here with the Speaker having told them they'll give them 48 hours notice. The way to avoid the fiscal cliff has been right in the face of the Republican leaders, both McConnell and Boehner, for days and days and days and days, going into weeks and months. And it's the only option that's a viable escape route. That's the Senate passed bill. Grover Norquist is standing in the way of this. Not the rich people, but Grover Norquist, the man who says what the Republicans can do. So I say to the Speaker, take the escape hatch that we've left you. Put the economic fate of the nation ahead of your own fate as Speaker of the House. Millions of middle-class families are nervously watching, waiting, and counting down the moments until their taxes go up. Nothing can move forward in regards to our budget crisis unless Speaker Boehner and Leader McConnell are willing to participate in coming up with a bipartisan plan. Speaker Boehner is unwilling to negotiate. We've not heard a word from Leader McConnell, and nothing's happening. Democrats can't put together a plan on their own because without participation of Leader McConnell and Speaker Boehner, nothing can happen on the fiscal cliff. And so far, they are radio silent.
Obama's original offer would have meant higher taxes for anyone earning $250,000 or more each year. His latest counteroffer takes that threshold up to $400,000. And although Boehner and other House Republicans at first refused to accept higher taxes on anyone, his current offer would mean higher rates for people making $1 million or more.
Republicans continue to work toward avoiding the fiscal cliff. The president's offer of $1.3 trillion in revenues and $850 billion in spending reductions fails to meet the test that the president promised the American people, a balanced approach. And I hope the president will get serious soon about providing and working with us on a balanced approach. Tomorrow, the House will pass legislation to make permanent tax relief for nearly every American, 99.81% of the American people. And then the president will have a decision to make. He can call on Senate Democrats to pass that bill, or he can be responsible for the largest tax increase in American history.
The GOP also takes issue with the cuts Obama proposed. Although the president says those would equal $930 billion, Republicans note he also wants $50 billion in new infrastructure spending and $30 billion for unemployment benefits. Overall, Boehner's plan means $1 trillion in more revenue and $1 trillion in more cuts. That's a proposal the House Speaker says he's putting to a vote in the House likely this week. The big question here, does he think it could actually become law, or is it purely symbolic? Democrats in the Senate promised to shoot down Boehner's proposal just minutes after he announced it. Majority Leader Reid says in a statement, Speaker Boehner's Plan B is the farthest thing from a balanced approach. It will not protect middle-class families because it cannot pass both houses of Congress. Politico says the concessions Boehner's already made would have been unthinkable for Republicans just a year ago. But the House Speaker says while his bill goes to a vote, he'll keep working with the president to try and reach a deal they can both agree on. For Newsy, I'm Zach Toombs.
Put the white on the flam for your temper. Just toss that ham in the frying pan like spam and done when
What we said was give us $1.2 trillion in additional revenues, which could be accomplished without hiking tax rates, but could simply be accomplished by eliminating loopholes, eliminating some deductions, and engaging in a tax reform process that could have lowered rates generally while broadening the base.
Happy to have an honest debate about the Bush tax cuts we disagree on, those giving the wealthiest Americans more tax breaks.
Questions?
Reid, when it comes to the Bush tax cuts, now that Congress is divided, why didn't Senate Democrats push through this bill back when you controlled the Senate, the House, and the President?
The tax cuts weren't about to expire then, so that's why we're doing it now.
Foreseeing this issue 2 years ago.
They expired at the end of 2010.
And that's why they were extended 1 year.
But why didn't they vote when you could have pushed this bill through and had it signed into law?
Next question.
The Treasury Department said last week that we will hit the debt ceiling again near the end of the year. Are you prepared?
I think the debt ceiling will come after the first year, but please, everyone, accept this. They tried it before. They, the Republicans, they tried it before. We're going to shut down the government, and we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. They want to go through that again. Fine, but we're not going to be held subject to something that was done as a matter of fact in all previous administrations.
Will you support raising it by another $2.4 trillion?
If it has to be raised, we'll raise it.
Let's start with President Obama. Here's White House spokesman Jay Carney this afternoon.
We cannot play chicken with the economy in this way. It's just too darn risky. It's not appropriate.
Too risky, not appropriate. You hear Senator Obama on March 16, 2006, explaining why he was voting against raising the debt ceiling then. Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices, he said, today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better, he said. I therefore intend to oppose the effort to increase America's debt limit. So that's 180 degrees opposite from his position now. And here's how spokesman Robert Gibbs explained when the question first came up back in January.
To this quote from the senator. The fact that we're here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. Leadership means the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better. I therefore intend to oppose the effort to increase America's debt limit. I suspect you know who I'm quoting. That is Senator Barack Obama in 2006 voting against raising the
and I think
ceiling.
what is important is it's understand that the raising the debt limit was not in question in the outcome.
52 to 48.
In the outcome of that vote.
It's a close vote. 52 to 48.
Well, we've had closer. I think I think it's important that the outcome, based on the outcome of that vote, as I mentioned, the full faith and credit was not in doubt. Full faith and credit of our government and our economy was not in doubt. And the president used it to make a point about needing to get serious about fiscal discipline. And so I think it is up to, and it's important for Congress, because we know not to play politics with this, not to play games, to find a way to raise that debt limit, understanding that we have to, as I mentioned to Matt, we're going to have to take some serious steps to get our fiscal house in order. But we understand, we know what happens. We know the catastrophic actions with things like Social Security and Medicare if you threaten the solvency of the government.
So he only voted that way because he knew that it was going to pass.
And I think clearly he was sending a message.
But he knew it was going to pass. That's why he voted against it that way.
His vote was not necessarily needed on that.
The problem is that
the way Bush has done it over the last 8 years is to take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt from $5 trillion for the first 42 presidents. Number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome, so that we now have over $9 trillion of debt that we are going to have to pay back. $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
If my Republican friends believe that increasing our debt by almost $800 billion today and more than $3 trillion over the last 5 years is the right thing to do, they should be upfront about it. They should explain why they think that more debt is good for our economy. How can the Republican majority in this Congress explain to their constituents that trillions of dollars of new debt is good for our economy? How can they explain that they think it's fair to force our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren to finance this debt through higher taxes? That's what it'll have to be. Why is it right to increase our nation's dependence on foreign creditors? They should explain this. Maybe they can convince the public they're right. I doubt it. Because most Americans know that increasing debt is the last thing we should be doing. After all, I repeat, the baby boomers are about to retire. Under the circumstances, any credible economist would tell you we should be reducing debt, not increasing it. Democrats won't be making arguments to support this legislation, which will weaken our country. Weaken our country. We're being asked to do what shouldn't be asked of us. To increase the debt to almost $9 trillion. I hope everyone walking down to these desks today will understand what they're doing. What they're doing to our country. On this side of the aisle, we know. Thank you, Madam President.
Cover me when I run. Cover me through the fire. Something knocked me out the trees. Now I'm on my knees. Cover me.
On the Simpson Bowls, the quote from your speech last night was, he created, the president, a new bipartisan debt commission. They came back with an urgent report. He thanked them, sent them on their way, and then did exactly nothing. The problem with that, as people have pointed out all day, you were on the commission and voted against it. David Brooks in the New York Times, a piece entitled Ryan's Biggest Mistake, said Ryan voted no. This was a devastating blow. We would have had national action on debt reduction. You're allowed to defend yourself.
Well, actually, I disagree with that. Read the next paragraph of my speech, if you will. Do you have it right in front of you?
I don't.
The next paragraph is, we offered alternatives. So if I didn't like Simpson Bowles, and I love Simpson and Bowles, they're great guys, I just don't think that plan actually fixed the problem. So what we did in the House is we took the ideas we liked from Simpson Bowles and then added other reforms to it and offered a solution and passed it. You can't get to common ground until you put solutions on the table, and that's the fault we're making about President Obama. He offered no solutions. The Senate hasn't passed a budget in 3 years. President Obama, not a single time, sent a budget to Congress where he said, here's how I'm going to fix the fiscal problem. So he created the commission, then disavowed the commission. We offered alternative solutions. That's how you get to common ground. That's what the president hasn't done. And the most predictable economic crisis coming in this country is a debt crisis. It takes leadership to prevent that from happening.
Have any of you all met Paul Ryan? We should get him to come to the university. I'm telling you, this guy is amazing. I always thought I was okay with arithmetic. This guy can run circles around me. And he is honest, he is straightforward, he is sincere, and the budget he came forward with is just like Paul Ryan. It is a sensible, straightforward, honest, serious budget, and it cut the budget deficit just like we did by $4 trillion. The President came out with his own plan, and the President, as you remember, came out with a budget, and I don't think anybody took that budget very seriously. The Senate voted against it 97 to nothing. He therefore, after a lot of pressure from folks like me, he came out with a new budget framework, and in that new budget framework, he cut the budget deficit by $4 trillion over 12 years. And to be candid, this $4 trillion cut was very heavily back-end loaded. So if you looked at it on a 10-year basis and compared apples to apples, it really was about a $2.5 trillion cut.